As I got another rhyme, another rhythm for y'all to listen. I'm never quitting on my mission, I'ma roll with what I'm giving. Got some ambition, this new edition, filling positions. Looking at the void in myself and feeling what's missing. Better watch the way you going, better go in the right direction. In the moment you stressing, but you gon' be counting blessings. And I know that for certain, keep on working, open curtains. Haters swerving, cause they ain't ready for your final version. Whoa. I'm never gonna give up, fall down, I just gotta get up, yeah.
You're listening to the Tom Ficklin Show on WNHH-LP 103.5 FM, your home for community radio.
A term. And after that, I was called to the Mount Airy Baptist Church in Bridgeport, and that's where I served for 17 years. And overlapping those years of service was my becoming a clinical social worker, going back to school for the master's in social work and a doctorate in social welfare, and combining those two areas in my pastoral work and as an adjunct member of the faculty here at the Yale Divinity School, which started in 1987. In 1992, I was invited to become university chaplain at Yale and senior pastor of the Church of Christ, and resident in its chapel called Battelle Chapel. And so I stepped down from Mount Airy after those 17 years, came back to New Haven and served as university chaplain for 15 years. During that time, we did a lot of work on promoting multi-faith campus ministries and understanding amongst different religious traditions and traditions that would be considered by some as spiritual and not necessarily religious, but part of the larger matrix, diversity of spiritual orientations that people have in our world. And so that was a very exciting time that I really enjoyed. And then after those 15 years as chaplain, I stepped down and became a full-time faculty member at the Wurzweiler School of Social Work at Yeshiva University in New York City. Wurzweiler is the school where I went back to and got the master's and the doctorate. So this is how all these things get connected. And so I served on faculty there for 5 years, and the fifth year is when I was invited to become pastor of Dixwell Congregational Church. Here again, a full swing, a place that I had been at as a student almost 50 years earlier.
Right.
So I came back to Dixwell and was there almost 12 years, and decided to retire from the parish ministry a year ago. That is, my family and I thought about it and decided that this year, 2023, would be the year I would retire. We made that decision in 2022 after leading the congregation through the pandemic and helping it to survive and thrive and to stabilize its presence in the community. It was the spring of 2023 when the invitation came to be in the current position. So here's the connection. The current position is one of guiding and facilitating students at the Divinity School who want to acquire a joint Master's of Divinity or Master of Art in Religion with a Master's in Social Work. And we have a joint relationship with the UConn School of Social Work. That's been on the books, and we've had students to go through it over the years. And so we want to expand the partnership with 2 or 3 other schools of social work in addition to UConn. And the reason for such an attraction is that the state, as you know, is dire need of more professionally trained social workers. And divinity students who go into a joint degree find a lot of value complementation between the values of social work, the skills that you learn, either in the clinical area of pastoral counseling policy area of legislation, that kind of thing, administration, or community organizing. Those are the three areas that social workers focus on in their training and practices. So my job here, having done that work in the church and in the community, and to incorporate it, my clinical knowledge as a social worker dealing with trauma in the pastoral realm, I pull all that together to help students to make their journey through the joint degree program. So that's the full circle kind of context.
I really, and the concentric circles, as you say, and interlocking circles, hopefully people can see the labyrinth. I really appreciate your giving that context. Talk to me, Jerry, and again, we have about 20 minutes or so. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you were in Czechoslovakia, Kosovo?
Oh no, well, one of these kind of synergies. When I came to Yale Divinity School, there was also a person named Dr. Richard Malika, who was a psychiatrist doing his residency at Yale New Haven Hospital, but he was also interested in religion, and he was in the Master of Arts in Religion program. We became friends and had mutual interest in spirituality and psychiatry, and done research together and done some publications together. He created what's called the Harvard Program in Refugee Trauma. And this is a program that trains mental health workers across mental health disciplines and primary health care to provide clinical assistance to people who've been traumatized by war, mass violence, and natural disasters. And so my first stage of work with them, I've been involved with HPRT, the Harvard Program in Refugee Trauma, now for 25 years. And my first assignment with that work was to assist people in Bosnia right after the Bosnian conflict. So I went to Bosnia several times over a 7-year period, and working with our colleagues. We had a team of physicians in Bosnia, but working with them to provide mental health care to people affected by the war that had ended with the Dayton Accords in the early 90s. And then I've incorporated trauma work in my work as a pastor, and certainly the needs of the African American community.
And the reason I really appreciate your sharing that context and that part of your journey, as well as because for the shows, although I do strictly historic shows, but I also like to kind of, even if it's a historic episode when someone's listening, I ask them to kind of translate that in terms of what's going on today. But today, that translation is not too difficult to make in terms of what's going on in the Middle East and the founding of most of the religions. I just wonder what's on your mind in that regard. You and I can't mandate a ceasefire at the moment. We could invoke Ralph Bunche perhaps, or we couldn't invoke Andy Young, or we could invoke President Carter's books. But I just wonder what's going through your mind now in terms of the refugee, whatever crisis or word you want to use in terms of the humanity, this displacement of humanity that's going on, and again the need for what you're doing, because even if the ceasefire happened today, these traumas, these bombs, these episodes, these deaths, these murders will perhaps take place in the future.
Yeah, there, as you know, there's long-term significance, long-term intergenerational trauma that happens after major events like a war or natural disasters or civil unrest. So when we think about it, just in the last few years, we've had the culmination of problems between Israel and Hamas, between Israel and Gaza. The problems that we are now seeing didn't just ferment overnight. It's a long history of conflict. That's one scene. Then we have the situation in the Ukraine. That's another scene. And we've had some atrocities happening in civil war conflicts in different parts of Africa. And then when we look at our domestic situation, George Floyd, other the killings and state-sponsored terrorism of Black people and women and men and children. You see, these are variations. These brutalities are a variation of the same problem of racism and homophobia and religious fundamentalism. And what needs to happen is, these are very complex things, but in light of the current situation in Israel, between Palestine and Gaza, or Israel and Gaza, in addition to all the political stuff that's going on in negotiations behind the scenes between various countries, including Iran and Egypt and the United States, someone has to constantly talk about the need for there to be a different atmosphere whereby, as my mentor, and you're familiar with the work of Howard Thurman, used to talk about all the time, is that you've got to redefine and take away the definition of enemy. That it sounds, optimistic and all that, but the reality is that until people start seeing each other as equal human beings, as long as we stay trapped in this us and them, my religion, my ethnicity is superior to yours, it creates those barriers and that kind of segregation in which power then takes advantage of, and whoever has the power in a segregated world, the people or the institutions with the power live a different quality of life from those from whom their use of power then oppresses. And so you get that imbalance, and over time, people who are oppressed will reach out and resist and behave in ways that are inhumane on both sides. On both sides.
And let's continue on that theme a little bit, because you've also traveled to South Africa, and though you weren't there during the overt oppression, you saw the effects of what happened for apartheid to have reigned its ugly head for several decades. Share a little bit about that, your South African experience.
Yeah, I've been to South Africa several times. My initial reason for going as a Fulbright, senior Fulbright scholar, was to do research and to learn through the University of Pretoria Department of Practical Theology and University of Pretoria School of Social Work, how social workers and ministers were being trained and educated to, in fact, help people who have been traumatized by apartheid. And so that's a continuous theme with my work in Bosnia, my work in South Africa, my work right here in our own community, and in the private counseling I occasionally do.
And so let's continue. I guess want to stay on this world, the global world and the neighborhood world, because people often ask what the show's all about, and I say it's about what's going on in your home and your family and your church and your neighborhood and your world and your state, wherever you define your locus of control. You are affected, and you want to try to muster up and gird your loins, so to speak, so you can be if not a change agent, an influence change. But talk about, so just include Haiti on your list as well. I mean, people, that's kind of become now back burner news, but people forget the issues that have been going on there for so more recently as well as in the past.
In any situation where you have dictators based upon religious differences or tribal differences or ethnic differences, the dynamic is the same. It's the abuse of power and people in power rationalizing the abuse of other people, such that they then make other people, in fact, less than. They become objects, as we say. And it's easy to then perpetuate more oppression and violence on people that you perceive as not another human being like yourself. And that condition only gets exacerbated by poverty, corruption, further means the use of resources that indeed segregates people and creates multi-tiered kinds of society. Some people think, for an example, that U.S. in general is we have social economic groups, middle class, rich, supposed to be rich, and poor. But we are a very class-oriented society. We have so many classifications. Just buy a plane ticket, and you'll see how class-oriented our society is. Everywhere from first class to coach to business privilege, or all these different cute little names. But everybody's on the same plane, and nobody gets to the destination before anyone else. But we have this illusion of difference in such a way that I can have a more comfortable ride than you, and that would be true if you have the so-called first class ticket versus coach. But we're all in the same plane. And that plane goes down, we're all going down. First class is not going to stay up, and coach was going to go down. And so we create these illusions of separateness and independence as if we can survive based on our own silo existence.
And I don't want to get too divergent, but just as you were chatting, Jerry, and again, it's always good to see you when you mentioned the classism, just in terms of the riding on a plane. My mind jumped to the 9/11 and the towers, and how the insurance companies decided that some people would get more money than others based on their projected income for the future.
Right.
I mean, so it's even kind of baked in, if you will, to our financial and insurance industry.
Well, it's baked into values that we derive from a distortion of capitalism. I'm not an anti-capitalist. I'm a capitalist in terms of we should create opportunities for people to flourish in whatever their capacities are. But the challenge is equal opportunity. I don't care what someone makes versus someone else, but if you're making money at the expense of other people, that brings in a different issues of equity and ethics.
Let's jump to the curriculum design a little bit, just to shift to the students that might be entering the program, or students that might be considering entering the program. How do you think the curriculum will help to not abolish racism, but help folks to kind of fight the battle for justice and equality better?
Well, one of the strengths and hallmarks of the social work profession is its fight against inequality and oppression. Many schools of social work curriculum has a clear emphasis on the BIPOC community, and on understanding the dynamics of oppression and systematic racism and other forms of racism. And so students who go into social work learn not only the theories, but they get skills for assessing and then intervening and creating better systems and organizations and relationships between people, depending upon the domains that they choose to work in. As I said, sometimes some students are more interested in the clinical pastoral counseling side, some are more interested in policy, others are interested in community organizing. And with the Reverend Dr. Barber here at the Divinity School with his Public Policy Institute, social work and public policy, that goes hand in hand. So what we're trying to do is to make that kind of education available to a cohort of students who want to go in that direction. We have approximately 300 students across our degree programs, and we hope that on average to have about 8 to 10 students every year in a joint degree program. We have 7 who have completed so far in the last 3 or 4 years, and we have 3 students entering the joint degree program in the fall. But it's important. It's an important time for people to know also that while the knowledge and skills that social work offers, which are in many ways different than what ministry training does offer, they're very complementary. But also ministry brings something to social work, brings a different kind of larger world ethical view and an appreciation for the spiritual nature of all life and of human beings. So it's not a matter of divinity education is being trumped by social work education. They are actually complementary and strengthening each other.
Mm, mm, excellent. You mentioned, Jerry, about another 10 minutes earlier on at kind of the top about the shortage. Do you define the shortage of people in this pipeline because of the lack of interest or because of the need exceeding our capacity to deal with it? How do you kind of define
the needs are greater because of issues of equity and poverty. There's so many ways to categorize the problems. The needs are greater because of economic stresses in a lot of people's lives. It's greater because of the general stress that people are dealing with on everyday living. And then there are people who've actually had traumatic experiences, be it through domestic violence or veterans who have returned from conflicts. And so social work, the need is greater across the board, and certainly in child welfare issues. So there's more, the need is greater, so there's more a need to have trained people who can understand and create programs and opportunities and relate to people according to their needs and help them to not only identify their own individual strengths and capacities, but to also critique the systems that create the burdens that people are carrying. It's not just a matter of locating the problem to whatever extent it exists within a person's personality and behavior. Behavior change. I mean, that's important too. But if you're also dealing with people who are in systems that are constantly bombarding them and adding more and more burdens. So it's both individual and social in that sense, that the work is to critique and to provide ways out and better ways of administering social welfare programs and services.
Is it too, Jerry, I really appreciate that clarification. Is it too simplistic to say that individuals might be quote unquote sick to some degree, but is it too general to say that society is sick?
Yes, I don't think it's too general. I think that's real. The way in which social media, for an example, shows us how we have been conditioned to violence, for an example, that violence is a form of entertainment, that people can take out their phones and record abuse rather than intervening to stop it. That's a conditioning that has come upon us, and it's not going anywhere because social media and all other forms of social media are emerging. The whole issue of AI, artificial intelligence, how we're going to interact and be able to make distinctions between what's real and what's not real. All these things play upon our psychic and our unconscious, and without being aware and prepared without being prepared to be aware of how this functions and how this affects our behavior and our thinking, we can get into a robotic way of being without even knowing that we're being robotic.
The Pavlovian theory kind of kicks in.
I often wonder. I know, this is too simplistic, Tom, as you said. I know the power of the state, for an example, the police power of the state. But I've often wondered what would have happened during the George Floyd arrest and with the police officer having his knee on his neck. What would have happened if any one of his police colleagues, had walked over to that police officer and put their hand under his arm and say, "Look, stand up, let's release him a little bit." We would have a whole different story, right? Now, as a citizen, if you're standing there and you feel like you really want to run over and grab the police officer, you know what could happen to you. You can get arrested for interfering with the police officer. You can even get shot because you're threatening, perception of threatening a police officer. But the whole point is, how do we interrupt? How do we intervene into modes of thinking and behavior that leads to destruction? How do we do that before it gets to the point of destruction?
Jerry, for people that are listening and students or even parents or just anyone that's listening that has interest in the program and how they might know someone in their network that might be interested in applying, what's the best way for them to kind of discover information?
Oh, they can go on the yale.edu and then click on the Divinity School, or they can email me. It's my, as we say, it's my government name, Frederick.Streets, FREDERICK.Streets, STREETS @yale.edu.
Great, great, great. We have about 3 or 4 more minutes. I want you to kind of, what if there's something that's burning in your heart, but I'll kind of throw a, hopefully not a curveball or a spitball or a forkball to you, but share, if you will, a biblical passage either in the Old or New Testament that you think people need to really just ponder, whether you're a Christian or Jew, it doesn't matter, that might be of interest to folks today that you'd ask them to kind of either say to themselves or think about so that we can create peace on earth, goodwill toward men and women.
Yeah. Well, two come to mind. One is in the Christian world, we often cite John 3:16, for God so loved the world that God gave of God's self, that whoever believes in him shall not perish but have everlasting life. In the Hebrew scriptures is you should love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and your neighbor as yourself. Those are two anchoring not only pastoral encouragements, but justice encouragements. To love others as you would love yourself is an act of justice and stewardship of human life. For me, John 3:16 is the essence of the Christian message, as MC squared is the essence of the message of physics.
Mm-hmm.
It's an elegant, simple statement that's so comprehensive. MC squared is such an elegant formula. John 3:16 is the same whether you're a Christian or atheist, because I think all people are spiritual, not necessarily religious. But to think that however we understand God or the ultimate source of that created all of creation, to think that that force or that creator loves us, to think about that and to accept that can have a profound feeling, a profound impact on our self-esteem.
We have about eight more minutes. Let's drill down if we can, as we conclude on that thought, because again, it might be too philosophical, but again, the social work mission is somewhat of a philosophical mission as well. My point is, when you talk about loving yourself, Jerry, I wonder if you agree with this. Some people don't have a good grasp on who their self is, if you follow me.
Right.
And or that they might feel that their self is full of unworthy existence.
Well, wait. So here's what social work and pastoral work have in common. For an example, in the story of the creation, some people may be familiar with the creator is looking for the first created couple, right? And the story tells us that they were hiding from the creator, and when the creator finally found them, he said, "Hey, I've been looking for you guys, been calling you. What's up with this? How come you haven't answered?" And the response from one of them was, "We didn't answer. We heard you calling us. We didn't answer because we were naked." The story of Adam and Eve, right? And here's the question that the Creator asked, and this is the question that social work and ministry helps people to wrestle with and come to an understanding of. The Creator says to them, "Who told you you were naked? What is the reference point for your identity? Who told you that you're not lovable, that you're not worthy? What experiences have you had? What systems do you interact with that reinforces in you a sense of inferiority? How do we strengthen our internal selves, and at the same time, how do we activate our sense of citizenship by challenging systems of oppression?"
Excellent. Jerry, let's take another 30 minutes. 30 seconds rather. I want to give you the last last word. And this will not be a one-off, and I really appreciate your being available. I know we juggled a little bit this morning in terms of my
No. Well, I appreciate
time.
you, and I appreciate the work you're doing. When I look back on my career, it looks so there's a synergy to it. But I want to say to your listening audience that sometimes you just have to follow your own instincts, follow your own passions. I would have never thought coming to YDS in 1972 that 50 years later I'd be sitting here having this conversation with you. I came to YDS to become a pastor, and I did. That's all I wanted to do. But in the process of doing that, I learned more about myself and what I was interested in, and that led me to pursue other educational and other formal and informal educational opportunities, which then opened me further to my own self-awareness, as you mentioned earlier, which then led to these involvements that I've described. But it wasn't planned out, like I sat down and said, I'm going to do this. So I would ask your audience to really trust their instincts, and whatever the wrestling is, whatever the discomfort is, that's a gift from themselves to themselves, trying to tell them something about their journey.
As
not to resist it, to learn from it, to invite
it. As we move into, this month has been Native American Heritage Month kind of thing. As we moved into Thanksgiving, and just I'm really glad you clarified about your undergraduate experience. Say a little bit more about, because that's so. I did not know that. I thought it was an extrapolation from Canada, but to know this was a native school, so to speak, named after it. This is a tremendous celebration. Some people might know about Dartmouth and its early origins, but certainly what you just said was really important. So let's just close on that point as we recognize that we're in Quinnipiac land as we speak.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, in 1865, when Ottawa University was founded, it was part of the missionary movement, and there's a lot of critiques and weak sides of that whole history. But the missionaries who were working out in the Midwest and Kansas were in partnership with the Ottawa Plains Indians. They weren't trying to missionize them into being Christian. So the school was created and in honor, not only in honor of the Ottawa Plains Indians, but to also incorporate some of the culture and history of the Ottawa Plains Indians. And any native person of that tribe and some other tribes in the Midwest are able to go to Ottawa free, as they should, and get a really good, small school, roughly 1,400 people, liberal arts college, affiliated with the American Baptist, but itself is not a proselytizing school. So coming from Chicago, on the south side of Chicago in the 1968 to Ottawa was a real cultural and educational experience for me.
Excellent. Jerry, thank you so much, man.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Continue to be well and do well.
Same to you. And I'll say it again. Hello to your family, as you always say to mine.
As well as your family.
Okay. Thanks again, man.
Okay. Thank you.
Right. Over and out.
As I got another rhyme, another rhythm for y'all to listen. I'm never quitting on my mission. I'ma roll with what I'm giving. Got some ambition, this new edition, filling positions. Looking at the void in myself and feeling what's missing. Better watch the way you going, better go in the right direction. In the moment you stressing, but you gon' be counting blessings. And I know that for certain. Keep on working, open curtains, haters swerving, cause they ain't ready for your final version. Whoa. I'm never gonna give up. Fall down, I just gotta get up, yeah.
You're listening to the Tom Ficklin Show on WNHH LP 103.5 FM, your home for community radio.